I'm going to get straight into this presentation, which is about beating procrastination and boosting productivity. Now for me, my personal routine actually starts the night before. Every day before I go to bed, I will create a to-do list of the things I want to do for the next day. And this is actually a habit that I developed during my time at secondary school. So what I used to do was every night before I'd go to bed, I would check my timetable, see what lessons I'd have for the day ahead, and then pack my school bag accordingly. And this habit is something that has basically continued on into my adult life through the use of this to-do list. And I found that it really just helps me visualize my schedule for the next day and just gets me prepared. In terms of what to include or how to actually create this to-do list, I would recommend being overly ambitious with just how much you can get done in a day. So for me, I try to put enough things in my to-do list where it's actually challenging for me to tick off every single one. And the reason why I do that is that way I can't really be complacent. I have to use my time wisely if I want to get everything done in the day. I also strategically place my to-do list on the home screen of my phone. And the reason why I do this is that it's a constant reminder for me that I have something yet to do in the day. So when I'm opening my phone and I might think about watching Netflix or going on to Instagram, before I do that, I have to get past my home screen. And so I really recommend having your to-do list in a place that's very easy to access for you. I'd also recommend breaking down large tasks into smaller ones. So on your to-do list, don't have anything generic. Don't on your to-do list have something like, I'm going to study English or I'm going to study economics, because it's something that's really hard to measure. It's not specific enough. You can really cheat yourself because you don't know what exactly you meant by I'm going to study. What you need to do is make your to-do list very specific. So instead of saying broadly, I'm going to study English, you might want to say, I'm going to study these 3 chapters of this book and I'm going to do this homework exercise. And that's a lot more measurable. You can quite clearly determine whether you have or have not achieved those goals in your day. And so you can hold yourself a lot more accountable in that sense. But the other thing is that by breaking down a large task into smaller ones, it provides you with a sense of dopamine from achieving each and every one of those tasks. I find that when I've completed even a small task, I get a sense of satisfaction from completing the task. And so that spurs me on to keep doing more and more work, because that sense of achievement is something that I'm always looking for. A school timetable really gives structure to your day. On any given day, you know exactly what subjects you have and what to look forward to. And I think that sense of structure, and particularly the effect of time blocking, knowing that during, for example, 11 to 12, you have this exact subject, is something that really helps give structure to your day and makes you that much more productive or efficient. I think the best way of doing this is just creating an Excel spreadsheet. On the left-hand side, have the hours in the day, and then just write down what exactly you're going to do on any given day. You don't have to follow it rigidly. I'm not saying that you have to do everything by the hour that you've assigned it to. It just gives you something to aim for. It also makes sure you cover all your bases. And I think that's particularly important when you're doing revision. For example, when I'm creating a revision timetable, I like creating the timetable just because I can quite clearly see how many hours I've allocated to certain things in a given week. And then I can identify if I've allocated too much or too little time to a certain thing, so that I know that my kind of week is quite well balanced. And then finally, there's an idea called Parkinson's law, which basically says that work expands to fill the time that you've allocated to it. Effectively, what Parkinson's law says is that if you allocate 4 hours to do a certain task, you will procrastinate and you will really do it slow enough that you will do it in exactly 4 hours. Whereas if you'd allocated the same task, but only giving yourself 2 hours to do it, you'll probably finish it in that same 2-hour period. And the reason for that is because you've probably got something lined up in the other 2 hours that you haven't allocated. So you're forced to be more active and procrastinate less. Now, it's all well and good having this kind of sense of structure, but if you want to get the most out of your day, I'd highly recommend waking up early. I personally believe that waking up late creates a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. Imagine you wake up at 10:30 or 11 a.m. If you wake up, then you've got to brush your teeth, you've got to take a shower, you've got to have breakfast. By the time you're kind of ready to actually start on with your day, you're probably in your head going to think, oh, the day's already kind of gone to waste. I've already missed so many hours. And so mentally, my mindset kind of switches, and I'm probably just not in a particularly productive mindset for the rest of the day. So in that sense, there's a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. You think that the day has been wasted, and ultimately that causes you to waste your day. The other benefit of waking up early is really this idea of carpe diem. I find that if I wake up and really get on with my routine very early on the day, I feel like the day has been conquered within the first few hours. Again, if I refer back to this to-do list, and I imagine I have 11 things to do on this to-do list, and I've already done 4 or 5 of these tasks, and it's only 10 or 11 a.m. But I feel like I am so far ahead of pace or ahead of schedule, but that really motivates me to keep going, and I feel good about myself. And in terms of advice on how to actually wake up early, I'd recommend buying a physical alarm clock or putting your phone away from your bed. So I actually put my phone on the other side of my bedroom. And the reason why I do that is because it prevents me from giving an easy out. When we wake up in the morning and our phone is right next to our bed, it's so easy to just go and hit that snooze button. And I try to kind of find a way to minimize that happening. And so by having your phone on the other side of the bedroom, it forces you to get up out of bed to turn off this alarm. And by doing that, you've basically conquered or overcome the most difficult part of probably starting your day, which is actually getting out of bed. Now, meditation and journaling are the 2 habits that I've introduced the most recently into my kind of routine or schedule. And I just found that the long-term results have been so beneficial. By meditating, I found that it really helps to clear my mind and provide a sense of focus and clarity. You become aware of just how many distractions are running through your head, and you, by meditating, kind of get this sense of laser focus for the rest of the day. Again, it just provides you with a really strong sense of satisfaction and achievement. The biggest reason why people don't take up meditation is effectively because they might have tried it 1 or 2 times and they say, oh, I've tried meditating and I don't feel any sort of effect like that. And I guess the thing is, you're probably looking at it the wrong way if that's your mentality, because it's not supposed to be effective the first time round. Meditation is a skill that you have to hone and improve upon over time, just like pretty much anything else. It's the equivalent of going to the gym and expecting yourself to be able to lift ridiculously heavy weights the first time you ever go to the gym. No, in reality, like, we have to go to the gym, we start off with the low weights and we build up our muscle over time until we have a good and well-trained physique. And it's the same way with meditation. You have to start off slow, you start off small, maybe you meditate for a minute or 2, and then gradually you build it up over time. And I think the long-lasting effects of meditation are really good. And in the same kind of manner, journaling is also really good. So what journaling entails is either writing down or speaking out verbally your thoughts. And I found that journaling has 2 real benefits, which is it creates a sense of mindfulness and also a sense of gratitude. When you put pen to paper, you become a lot more aware because you're actually analyzing and evaluating every kind of thought that you've had over the previous day. So you start becoming a lot more aware of just how you're feeling. You start becoming aware of things that you may have taken for granted previously. And again, by reflecting upon yourself, I think it puts you in a really good mindset to kind of conquer the day ahead of you. Now, contrary to popular opinion, I actually recommend that you start with the easy tasks. Most people say that you should do the hardest tasks first, but I actually really disagree with that. I think if you start with the easy tasks, it basically tricks your brain into thinking you've made a lot of progress in a very short period of time. Imagine you have 5 pieces of homework to do. 4 of them are really easy and 1 of them is really hard. Now, if you start off with doing the first 4 easy ones, you might be able to finish all 4 of them to a high standard within the first 2 hours. And every time you finish a single piece of work, you're going to get a dopamine hit from the sense of satisfaction of finishing the work and taking something off your list. Whereas if you start off with the hardest task first, it's very likely, or it's probable that you might spend an hour and a half or 2 hours on just one task, and you may not have made that much progress towards that task. And so you're not getting any sense of satisfaction. In fact, you're probably going to get quite mentally fatigued and mentally drained because you've put a lot of effort trying to achieve a task, maybe not actually have that many results, and knowing full well that you still have 4 other tasks that you still have to complete. At the end of the day, we're ultimately aiming to enter a flow state. The flow state, other people kind of know it as the zone, but it's effectively a state of complete mental focus on a particular task, where you're undisturbed by any external thoughts or distractions. And I think maybe a good example of this is probably when you're actually sat in an exam hall doing an exam paper. When you're writing an exam, you're probably not thinking about anything else but the exam paper and the exam question in front of you. You're not thinking about time. You're not thinking about anything else going in your life. You're not thinking about other people. You're solely focused on that exam. And that's probably when you are most productive and you probably get the most work done in a short period of time. And we're effectively trying to emulate that scenario. Now, in that scenario, you're in a quiet exam hall with basically next to no distractions and a very important task ahead of you. And so we need to try and replicate those conditions. The most obvious source of distraction is probably our phones, because they're always pinging off with lots of different messages and notifications. So to try avoid that, we need to reduce any possible distractions from our phone. So I recommend turning your phone onto do not disturb or airplane mode. You need to basically enter a state where you almost forget that your phone even exists. So the extreme of this is literally chucking your phone into a different room or into a drawer or something so that it's out of sight, out of mind. For a very similar reason, I would recommend against using the Pomodoro technique. Now, the Pomodoro technique, for those of you who aren't aware, is basically a revision technique where you study for about 25 minutes and then give yourself a 5-minute break. Now, I completely disagree with this method, probably for two reasons. The first being that 25 minutes simply isn't enough time to really enter this heightened flow state where you're completely focused on work. You're probably entering that flow state just as you're about to finish that 25-minute time period. And so it's quite ineffective in that sense, because just as you're about to reach the height of your productivity is when you actually stop. The other thing is, I personally think that we're kidding ourselves by saying that we're only going to relax for 5 minutes. Anyone who's picked up their phone, after 5 minutes, it flies by. So we're going to want to add additional time to that. So for both of those reasons, I don't think the time allocation of the Pomodoro technique is particularly effective. If you're going to do it, I'd recommend extending the time length for both of those things. So I personally do 2 hours of straight work, followed by 15 to 20 minutes of relaxation. And that way I'm able to enter and maintain a flow state and actually get work done. But also during that 15 to 20 minute time period, that's enough time for me to actually be satisfied with the break I've just had. As I alluded to before, the biggest distraction in our modern day and age is probably our phone, and with that is our social media usage. Now, the one social media that I am completely against is TikTok. The reason why is kind of twofold, but the broad sense is that it just completely destroys your attention span and turns your brain to mush. The reason why is because TikTok, for those of you who don't use it, has an infinite scrolling mechanism. So you can never, ever, ever run out of content on your phone. You will always be given something to look at. But the more probably problematic issue is the way the algorithm is designed, in that it gives you sporadic hits of dopamine. Not every single thing that you see on TikTok you're going to enjoy. It might be every third or fourth or fifth scroll that you enjoy. And so that kind of creates a mentality or mindset in our head where we go, just one more scroll. It creates a sense of addiction, almost similar to gambling in my opinion, where you just want one more. You just want one more because you never know if the next one will be the one video that you enjoy. This combined with the infinite scrolling means that you can spend so much time on TikTok without realizing how much time has gone by. And you can literally lose days, hours to this sort of thing. Now, all these pieces of advice that I've given, they're all well and good, but the key to it is kind of being consistent over time. There's no point kind of employing all of these techniques, but only doing it for one day. You've got to do this thing like day in and day out. Ideally, you do the same things every day without fail. It becomes instinctive, second nature, and you don't even think twice. It eliminates decision fatigue. An example of this during my exam season would be that I would wake up at roughly the same time every day, which would be anytime between 6 and 7 in the morning. I'd go to the gym the first thing. I'd get to the university for maybe 11 a.m., do 2 hours of work, have lunch, then do another 2 hours, take a break, another 2 hours, and repeat this until about 8 or 9 p.m. Go home, have food, maybe relax a little bit, and then the next day would start, go to bed. By doing this every single day, but you just become kind of used to it and you don't it doesn't even become a challenge to you eventually over time. So being motivated, in fact, it's unfeasible to maintain all the time. Like when I'm studying, I'm not motivated to study all the time, but I will do it anyway. And that's where discipline becomes more valuable. Discipline was all about doing the hard work, especially when you don't feel like it, more so than being motivated all the time and therefore wanting to do the work. That's the key difference. And I think being disciplined and having an internal sense of motivation, which I think is intrinsically linked with discipline, is made so much more easier when you have a meaningful target. So for me, during my school days, the most meaningful target for me was to do as well as I possibly could in my GCSEs and my A-Levels respectively. I knew that this was the thing that in the long run was going to give me the most satisfaction, more so than any procrastination, any YouTube video, any party could ever give me. The satisfaction on results day would be the greatest thing for me. I just want to note that you do not have to replicate my routine to get the same results. Like different people work in different ways. And so just see what works for you and see what's best. So by far the most structured or rigid routine that I probably ever employed was during school, between year 11 and year 13, so the GCSE and A-Level period. So I'm going to go through that schedule now, but also talk about some of the key things that I did differently that really helped me, I think, differentiate myself from other people. So I woke up at between 6 and 6:15 a.m. I'd get picked up between 7 and 7:15 from by my car share. I'd get to school for 8:30, and then between 8:30 and 8:50, which is when school would start, I would do anything from playing basketball, socializing with friends, maybe just having breakfast. And then at 8:50, I would pretty much just go through my normal school routine of, lessons, break time, lessons, lunch, and then more lessons. With the one exception being that I used to sit in my teacher's classroom during certain lunch times or free periods, do the work and get it reviewed. And effectively, I did that maybe 2 or 3 times every week. During year 11, I'd sit in my English teacher's classroom at lunchtime, do an essay, and get it reviewed. And that proved really, really effective because I was getting my work personally reviewed by a teacher in a one-to-one environment where I can ask as many questions as possible, and really find out how to level up and improve my work. And it was by doing this so consistently every single week during year 11, I was inevitably going to kind of differentiate or improve at a faster rate relative to other people, just because I was simply putting in so much more effort and work and time into honing my craft. And so I'd really recommend making the most out of the resources that you have available to you at school and university. If there are like kind of tutoring sessions, if there are teacher-led sessions, attend them. They will inevitably help you. I'd get home around 5:30 p.m. And then again, this is an example of having a structure, but being flexible in how I do it. So I would aim to get about 3 hours of work done. So normally that was between 7 and 10:30 p.m. And yes, I know there's a 30-minute time break, but that's to have dinner. But I would vary it if I went to the gym or if I had other things on. What I would generally just aim for was to just try do an hour of each subject. And because I'm only allocating an hour, I would be doing 3 different subjects. And that would mean that the work I was doing would remain fresh over the course of the evening. Rather than, I don't know, allocating 3 hours just on chemistry or just on physics. If I allocated an hour for physics, an hour for chemistry, and an hour for English, every time I switch up the subject, it feels like I'm learning something completely different. So it feels less mentally draining to study that way. As I say, I would eat between 9 and 9:30 p.m. And I'd go to bed anytime between 11:30 and 12 p.m. and then wake up at 6 to 6:15 the next day. This was a pretty effective routine. It was pretty sustainable. I was able to do it for the entire year. But if I have the benefit of hindsight now, and if I could change something, I'd probably give myself a bit more rest. There were periods during the school year, or there were days at school where I would actually fall asleep during some of my lessons. And there were weekends where I would literally just crash and go to sleep for the entire day during my rest day. And at certain periods, I got warnings from my teachers to actually put in less work or not to outwork myself or burn out. I take it with a pinch of salt. You can do this routine if you wanted to, but just be careful of burnout and really see if you're able to sustain it. Now, that concludes the end of this presentation. Thank you very much, everyone, to listening, and feel free to ask me any questions, and I'll hope to provide you with a good answer.